Chapter 19 discusses about program designing and technique for speed and agility training. One of the first terms we're discussing is speed, and by definition, it is the required ability to accelerate and reach maximal velocity. A sport example of this would be a track event. So for instance, the 100-meter dash. During this time frame, the athlete is trying to go from the starting block all the way to the 100-meter line, and within that time frame they're trying to have the max velocity to be able to reach the line. Another example of speed would be a basketball player running from end line to end line, from their basket to possibly the opponent's other basket as well. Both of these are an example of speed because they're both instances of these athletes are trying to reach that max velocity. The next term to describe is the change in direction, and that is going to be the physical capacity to change direction while decelerating and accelerating or recelerating, and then sometimes using different mode of travel, which would be considered the change in direction ability. An example of this would be a American football player. They are running routes. They are probably starting before the ball is moving, and they know they have a planned route to take so that they are able to catch the ball that is being thrown by the quarterback. During this time, they have to speed up and slow down, as well as being able to have a predisposition of where they are going to determine where they're going to be at. The other term that we're going to discuss is agility, which requires the use of perceptual cognitive ability in combination with the change in direction ability. This basically means that agility requires a thought process in combination with the acceleration and receleration and deceleration of the athlete. So for instance, an example of this would be a soccer player. They are seeing that the ball is moving out towards the wings, so then that would require a striker to start pushing up. Because of this, that they are now looking at the defenders and seeing how, once that wing player is going to get that ball, and how they are going to basically trying to trick out their opponent to be able to get the ability of getting the ball to score. All three of the terms of speed, change in direction, and agility all go hand in hand for athletes. But for instance, acceleration is going to be a part of agility and change of direction. And additionally, the deceleration ability and the mode of movement is what differentiates the three between all of each other. The next term we're going to be talking about is quickness. It doesn't really go into depth about it in chapter 19, but from what I could tell from the definitions of the three others, is that quickness is basically a combination of speed and agility. So you're being able to have fast reaction time, so you're able to react to have that cognitive level that is in agility, but being quick and speedy, like for instance in speed. So from my understanding, quickness is just a combination of speed and agility. An example of quickness would also again be an athlete just being able to change direction. So for instance, it could be either in soccer or basketball, to be able to react quickly to a change of the direction and being able to create that maximal force to be able to have quickness. The next term we're going to discuss about is the RFD, which stands for rate of force development, and the basic terminology of this word is the development of maximal force in a minimal amount of time. So typically this would be used as an index of the explosive strength of an athlete. The RFD, so the rate of force development, is able to be correlated within force production because it is how much force an athlete is able to produce within that minimal amount of time. They have shown in studies that this is more of a sought out feature, well, or not a feature, but a trait that an athlete has, for an athlete to be able to rapidly produce force over how much force an athlete can produce. So for example, an athlete can be able, the athlete would be able to change the direction. So maybe if they're going left and they have to create force or max force to go and move to the right direction. But an example of an athlete using their max force would be able to increase their jump height, which is important for an athlete, but many coaches and professional athletes are trying to create that rapid force within that minimal amount of time. A reason why the RFD is so sought out for is because typically for an athlete to exert their max force, it takes about 300 milliseconds, or also 0.3 of a second. But in most instances of a sport, it usually takes about 0 to 200 milliseconds, so 0 to 0.02 seconds for an athlete to create a movement or create a change or change a direction or be able to speed. Figure 19.1 demonstrates the different force over time relationship between an untrained athlete, heavy resistance trained, and explosive ballistic trained athlete. During this diagram, it shows that athletes that train with explosive ballistic, they do create a higher force within that 200 millisecond point. And then it's going to be the heavy resistance and then the untrained person. During this time frame though, once the athletes reach that maximal strength point, which is about 500 milliseconds, then the athlete with the heavy resistance, theirs is still increasing slowly higher up. Within time, their force is still increasing. The athlete with the heavy explosive ballistic training, although they did have a higher force at that 200 millisecond, their max strength starts to decrease, and it looks like it starts to kind of plateau a little bit and also decrease. An untrained athlete, once they hit that 500 millisecond point, because their force is a lot lower at the 200 millisecond, their max strength is significantly lower than the heavy resistance trained and the explosive ballistic trained athlete. The areas under each of the three curves represents the impulse, and impulse is the change in moment, which is resulting from the force. It's measured from the product of force and time. And during this, it has a correlation, impulse has a correlation with the RFD, which ultimately are the two factors for speed and agility mechanisms. Figure 19.1 is able to demonstrate and show a physical demonstration of how the RFD and the impulse all have a relationship within each other. It basically shows how over time, how force is beginning to show over the 5 seconds between the 5 seconds and the 2 seconds points. It shows how important it is for the athletes to be training for that max force within that minimal amount of time of that 2 seconds. And it shows how within that 5 second standpoint, yes, it does show max strength, but in most instances for athletes, they need that quick, being able to be quick and be able to have a change in the direction, have a fast speed, have a fast abilities and agilities within those points to be able to be a well athlete. This is why when using the RFD, they are using the formula of the force over time to be able to find that explosive nature of each athlete individually.